And we're live. So, Scotty, welcome to Deadly Discussions. How are you going today?
Thanks, Isaac. Yeah, going well. Really busy at the moment with working with a lot of our members, corporate partners, and government at the moment. But look, there's never a dull day at Kinaway with, fortunately, working and helping our businesses get through this COVID-19 situation at the moment.
Yeah, well, I think we've got a lot to unpack. So, tradition around Deadly Discussions, usually audio. You're my first live victim slash guest. So, we like to acknowledge the traditional landowners on whose land we record today. Usually it's a Wurundjeri, but I live on Bunurong country. So, I'd like to acknowledge them as the people that are recording today. And we'll get straight into it. Before we get into what's going on with the Kinaway and the CEO, I know you've shared some things with your background, where you've come from. Do you want to touch on just briefly where's your mob from and where you've been for the last 10, 15 years and what brought you, to this position at Kinaway?
I've been in WA for the last, probably 15, 16 years of the last 15, 16 of the last sort of 19 years. So over there working in private enterprise. I came back to Victoria because my wife got a really good opportunity, Victorian government over here. So we're both originally from Victoria. We had all our kids and raised our kids. We've got 4 kids, 17-year-old, 15, 12 and 10. And they've grown up majority in WA. So we made that family move back. And it's been pretty good, mate. It's been good to be back home. And I guess probably what I'm finding, the reason I applied for the Kinaway job was working in private enterprise and an executive, private enterprise for the last 12 or 13 years.
Yes.
I look, it was just an opportunity to work with Indigenous businesses, what I was really excited about. And I especially around helping accelerating some of those businesses, mentoring, looking for opportunities. And whilst there's a difficult time now with COVID-19, but with all impacts and risks associated to the economy, there's also opportunities as well. So it's been really good. Getting back involved in that. Our mob's originally from up Horsham Way. But a lot of my family were part of the stolen generation, and we were shipped up to Cummeragunja as well. Most of my family have been growing up around Balranald, New South Wales. So it's attached to a few different mobs, to be honest. But just identify myself as a deadly Koori.
That's the way. And we know we have Koori Knockout, which you guys have. Unfortunately, Murray's like me. We don't have anything as clever and catchy, but we'll get there. One of the things that I know you've been talking about, some of the stuff you put out for Kinaway is about this term of hibernation as a business, term of, that we are in a new chapter and a new way to do business. A lot of it's online, and a lot of it's digital. Can you elaborate more on what you mean by like hibernating as a business or even as a person? Because we find a lot of our Indigenous partners and businesses do one of things where they sort of just throw in the towel and say, I'm done, or they're looking for some sort of government support and funding. What would you say to someone who's, just found out that their sales have just been halved by, 80% and what do they do?
Yeah, look, it is really tough, and I guess it probably comes down to mindset that you've got to take into this. And mindset's a really simple thing to talk about within business, but a really hard thing to implement. So I guess one thing I've had my team do when they're speaking to all our members, and what we've been doing is contacting all our members and helping them navigate through this. So looking at maybe their financial situation, but also looking at opportunities for businesses as well. So what we've been trying to get, we've had numerous businesses reach out to us, say they wanted to close down. So it's getting back to look, let's not close down, let's hibernate. So change the terminology, hibernate. And what does that actually mean? That means, okay, maybe we don't have the sales, the opportunities aren't quite there at the moment. So maybe not have the same sales levels, if any. Maybe you can't provide any of the services or products that you need to because your supply chain or the way you deliver your services, you can't do face-to-face at the moment. So it's about looking at using that famous term of working on your business instead of in your business. And as entrepreneurs, we always get held up in working in our business. So one of the positives is just to work on your business. So staying motivated, remembering what your why is probably the most important thing. But why did you actually get into this business?
That's a very good point.
What are your values and what did you want to achieve? And they're not going to change. No matter, blackfellas are really, really strong and resilient. If you look at generations of trauma that we've all gone through, this is just another one of those challenges. So it's about changing that mindset of hibernation, working on your business instead of in it, and it gives you an opportunity to look for those opportunities, to pivot, stand there and go, okay, well, there's an opportunity over here, there's an opportunity there. Diversify your business, or use it as an opportunity to educate yourself. There's a few things that Kinaway is going to be doing over the next few weeks that we're launching, hopefully by the end of next week. We've got some online stuff that we can do together to actually help us, maybe not foolproof, COVID-19 proof our businesses, but certainly be able to go, okay, well, these are the stresses in our business. What can we do? What can we lever to relieve these stresses and look for other opportunities and maximise those?
Yeah, it's funny you say. I don't think there's any way you can foolproof it, and I think a lot of people are really hard on themselves on, what's happened, as if they could have done better or be better prepared. But I think many of us can't foresee what's happened, and then people probably doing well are people who sell bunkers, like preppers and that sort of thing. So I think one for me was the first thing was not to be so hard on yourself that these things happen. And then look for the short-term wins. I know there's a lot of actually winners, like you were saying. See a lot of Indigenous businesses who are in general supplies, office supplies, hand sanitizers, face masks. One case I heard is a business sort of just did a routine purchase, and then it rocked up early in the new year. And they said, well, what do I do with all this stock? And I know they were speaking to government, speaking to the chamber, and all of a sudden they make a massive sale for their business, which could be actually life-changing. But you've got advice around creating sustainability around that too, because even though you might be having big wins, what happens to those businesses when they come out of this situation? Is it still going to be the same, or is it going to be completely different?
Look, I don't think it's going to be the same. I think it's going to be different. I guess the one thing we're working on at Kinaway at the moment is what the recovery mode looks like. Whilst we're going to have, probably, I think some of the information we got from the survey from our members, around about 76% of our businesses are really, really struggling to the point where they're not able to operate at all. And then they've got a smaller amount, 3%, that are actually having best sales they could ever have. So to think that's sustainable, I think COVID-19 is going to teach us anything. It's not going to be sustainable. But again, looking for those opportunities and about relationships that you have with people. It's looking what you do, especially digitally, I suppose. Like there's not one single business that can't provide a product or a service digitally these days. That's about just pivoting and just making sure that, again, you can't foolproof what's happened with COVID-19, but you can use it as an opportunity to look at other ways to diversify business. And if you're doing quite well, like you said before, it's not going to stay there. What does the new business as usual look like? Nobody knows. And I think that's what's important to start thinking about. Yeah,
I think, having that investment, like what we're doing right now, even with the podcast that I usually run in a studio, I didn't really think of it, but that I couldn't do the same thing that I was doing for the last year, where I could just go down, everything's set up, I just plug and play. And then I upload my recording, and through that, I'm able to market and to reach new relationships, which then turn into, transactions down the track. But I can't drive there because it's in Kilsyth. So if I drive there, I'll get fined. So what are you doing? I'm going to the studio. So I had to pivot pretty quickly into setting up some equipment, put a small investment on what I can. It was sort of like weighing up where that investment in the business or personal development is going to go. And this is, the avenue I took. And on speaking of that, what's some examples of ways that our members, our Indigenous businesses, and any SME should look at, finding new sales avenues or, marketing? How do they go in this climate when everyone's either not turning their phones and TVs on because it's the same stuff, or people are just scrolling aimlessly and it's all about trying to get attention?
Yeah, I guess it's probably a couple of things we can talk about here. You're probably talking about things you and I discussed previously about noise levels and news feeds. So about understanding what's real and what's not is number one. Number two, I think it's probably looking at your what we call the hunting versus farming. Okay, hunting is out there looking for new business. Farming is the best return of investment that you'll ever have. Farming is who you're currently doing business with, who you've done business with in the past, and what opportunities you can find within those people to actually help move your business forward. So it's not spending lots of money on marketing. It's all low-cost sales generation at the moment that we need to be able to do. And picking up the phone and talking to an existing customer, this is one of the things you get to do now, is to working on your business, build on those relationships, because you may not have an opportunity with that person right there, right? But they're going to talk to 5 other people, okay, that may have some opportunity to pop up. And I worked in the car sales industry for a long, long time, and it was a dealer principal, some car dealerships, where that was one of our main sources of revenue. Is I could go on hundreds of $1,000s per month on advertising marketing, and it wasn't about how much money we made on the car. It was about keeping that customer engaged and then coming back for service and so forth.
Yeah, sure.
What we used to get was the best return of investment was just talking to our existing customer, asking for skills, and that's the most important thing we can do right now.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, let's move on to another question. Sort of around, let's go into managing sort of your receivables and your payables on the same page as I think as getting on the phone with customers. I think, empathy is really key here, because your people who to pay you, or people that you're going to pay, they'll be in the same situation. So I think going in with that empathy instead of where's my money sort of approach, what's advice you'd be giving to people to manage payables and receivables in this time?
Yeah, I think you covered it up pretty well then, about just understanding that other people are in the same position as you. So empathy is really important. Understanding what your expenditure is really early is important. Okay, and the government's announced some initiatives in regards to loan repayments, mortgage repayments, commercial lease arrangements. But it's about having those open and transparent conversations with your suppliers, okay? Because like we said before, they're going to be in the same boat as you. But also you need to understand what revenue you've got coming in as well, whether you've got any or you've got none. And understand that basically, and I've spoken about this before in a couple other podcasts, is that understanding your worst case and best case scenario, and hopefully you land somewhere in the middle. But again, you can't make any guesses. You've got to be really harsh. So it's been understanding, your profit and loss statement, understand where the revenue's coming from, where your expenditure's going, having those open discussions with your suppliers, not just about you being able to pay bills, but also what level of supplies they can give you as well. You might have, it might be, just say for instance, an artist that relies on getting canvas and paints, and you can operate quite well in this situation because maybe you go digitally and sell things online. But what if you can't get those suppliers, and all of a sudden you're back to square one? So it's understanding that very early on. Yeah,
that's important. And I think as that stress comes on, you were saying, going back to your why you got into business, some of my good friends who, probably only 4 or 5 months ago, they were announcing they've had, a life-changing contract. And now all of a sudden the business is nearly gone. It can be very humiliating in a way, because you're sort of like, you were, in your stride, you had confidence, and all of a sudden someone's pulled the rug out underneath you. What do you suggest to people, even just trying to get income in for their personal, living expenses and different things like that? Would you have any advice to someone who now can't draw an income from the business and they have to go work at Woolies or Coles? What would your best advice be to those sort of people?
I guess it's just being humble. I know it is quite hard, especially for Indigenous businesses, and especially some of our women that have been in business, that there's been a confidence issue there to get into business in the first place. Because being an entrepreneur, being an enterprise, takes a lot of confidence and backing yourself. And some of the conversations we've had in particular with some of our members is quite heartbreaking, that they've built these great businesses, maximise their opportunities, but then the opportunities dry up in a situation like this. How do you keep them engaged? So I guess you've got to make the right decisions for your family. That's the number one thing. Because like I said, any business can go in hibernation. Any business, and that's what we've got to start thinking about. Let's not start thinking of the worst, that we're going to go broke. The government's not going to allow that. Kinaway is not going to allow that. As a mob, we're not going to allow that to happen to each other. You look at some of the other parts of the community. So you look at the Jewish people. You look at Vietnamese, the Greeks in particular. Okay, the Greeks are a really good example. They've been in business for generations. We haven't. The Greeks have been really good. I remember when I was a kid, every fish and chip shop was owned by a Greek person. Now they're not owned by someone else. But guess what? The Greek people own the supply chain. They own, deliver the fish. They own the fishing boat. So, what I would love for our business to get to there. And that's not going to happen in the short term, especially with things like COVID-19. So you remember that they're going to be all the big things that happen. So that's about thinking back to our why we want to do it, make the right decisions for our families about getting income. So whether it is getting a job at Woolies, but don't lose that aim and that objective of having your own business and why you got into it in the first place. And you look at the values of an Indigenous business, and many surveys have been done, the values of an Indigenous business and a non-Indigenous business. A non-Indigenous business is about creating wealth, profits. An Indigenous business is not about that with some of the surveys. It's about belonging to something. It's about making a contribution. That doesn't change now because of COVID-19 and businesses aren't doing so well. It's, again, just go in hibernation. Don't be embarrassed. It's happening everywhere, but have that confidence that you still can relate and still turn back to your why you're doing it in the first place. And then most of the time that relates back to our family. So then if we do have to go get a job at Woolies or we're getting some benefits, then that's what it is. That's, we're still providing for our family. So our whys are still aligned to why we got into business as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think on that topic, I know one of the hardest jobs you've had and the team is actually talking to the businesses to get the data to survey. And some of those conversations, they wouldn't be very pretty. I think they'd be quite heartbreaking. But you've pushed through, and you've just shown me before, and I'll bring it up on the screen now. You've got the economic impact report here. Did you want to share a little bit about, who's this for? Who's the report for? Is this for government, or who's going to be the main recipient of this?
So this report was an accident, to be honest.
Yes.
What we did initially, and my team in particular, James and Damien, we were doing a triage on all our Indigenous businesses. And initially, we did an online survey, which we had a great response. People were talking about the help they needed, how their business was affected, especially financially, how many employees were affected. And then we got information like, oh my God, we're in dire strait here. If something it's like, how are we going to help everybody? And with the team that we've got, that made it quite difficult because we don't have a large team. So we split the database up, and I've got Damien James to go and speak to these people in detail about their businesses and collect some really good data. And it wasn't just about collecting the data. They also came up with some ways to help the businesses pivot, to help them go through their financials and understand where they're at, what their worst case and best case scenario was. Look, they were difficult conversations, but we've got some really good quotes in there as well. So, like, for instance, some people and I think this is the strength of being a blackfella, is that sometimes we can be shamed, about we're not really good at talking about how good we're going, and definitely get a bit shamed with doing too flash. But I think that's the same for everybody. But some of the businesses were like, I've got a quote here. Hey brother, just want to say that I really appreciate being able to yarn with you yesterday. It helped me clear up some things for me, and now I have things heading in the right direction. So thanks very much.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's not about just and look, it was confronting for my staff and me to talk to those people, but to our members. But I think people appreciated it as well. Sometimes it is about just having a yarn. So just out there that is an Indigenous business and just another Indigenous person, and someone's in Indigenous business, just ask how they're going. That's the one thing we can do for each other. Ask how we're going, and be prepared to sit there and have a bit of a discussion, and don't make any judgments. It's just an ear sometimes, just an ear. But some of the stats we came up with, it was 76% of businesses had their sales revenues drop below 70% what they did the previous year. So now that may not be any different to any mainstream business. And that's what I want to make really clear for this report when we present it to government. It's not about treating Aboriginal people differently, Aboriginal business differently to any other business. It's about understanding the why our people got into these businesses in the first place. About contribution. One of the famous stats out there is that an Indigenous business is 100 times more likely to employ an Aboriginal person. Now, if 70% of our businesses are dropping their revenue by up to 70%, there's not going to be any jobs out there for blackfellas. So I guess it's using this as a platform now to make some points with government, just give them some real data on Indigenous businesses and what it means to the rest of the community. And we're talking about confidence levels. We're talking about closing the gap. Not being able to provide specific support for Indigenous businesses will see the whole sector potentially fall over. And the social implications to that are massive, absolutely massive.
Yeah, huge. And I think a number that First Nations Capital shared about the gap being I think $30 million a year industry, where you've got funding going out to organisations to close the gap, and they are trying to close the gap. But if the gap was closed, it was, I think, a surplus of 16 mil to the Australian economy. Billion. I better go and check my facts. But the point being is that there's an incentive for all Australians to close the gap on a monetary level. And when we have those Indigenous businesses employing other Indigenous people, and it's not just a paycheck, it's a culture of it as well. And I think what we'll see is like a generation 2 of Aboriginal businesses that are coming out now, being more resilient and wise when it comes to being what's properly sustainable. I think we go after having government as our main customer. And we can see when things start to get a little bit heavy, it's good to have other market segmentation as well, other ways that you can generate revenue. So now you guys are on to a winner. I was just going to bring up some of the slide as we keep talking of some of the other businesses that are out and about. So here we go. Sharon, Kui Cafe. With Nova. We know she's doing well. She's got the frozen meals that looks like she's got approved, and she'll be hitting the ground running.
She's going through that process at the moment. I only spoke to her last night because Sharon's using this opportunity to also work on her business. So she came up with a really clever idea where she wanted to provide frozen meals to maybe the elderly, government agencies, and also just the community. And she very smartly came up with a survey.
Oh, hang on. Sorry. That was...
What is that?
That's Scott's VFL team that he's created on the side as well. We'll skip through that one.
Thanks,
that's in the wrong folder.
So Sharon's done quite well in trying to pivot. And now she's got some funding applications in for some grants and a loan to have a massive freezer in her factory that she's got.
Wow.
And I think this is talking about sustainability for her business because she was running a cafe. So sustainability for her is actually, I can provide these frozen meals now for the elderly and the community, but it's something she can continue on doing as well. Business. So like when I went through the survey and commend her greatly for thinking to have that entrepreneurial mindset to say, see what people want before you develop it. And so many people are interested in traditional foods as a frozen meal. So she's found something quite unique that she can take advantage of.
Yeah, I saw the survey. I saw my favorite, which is emu pies. So just the best with a bit of tomato sauce. That's a winner. So that's fantastic, mate. I think we've covered a lot of ground for today. To finish on a positive note, what do you see? What do you see coming out of this crisis? What do you see happening with the Indigenous businesses? And what are your sort of insights on what we should be doing? What if we had to write down a priority today, what should I do today for my business, Aboriginal business? Where would I start?
Well, I guess it's looking at what the recovery looks like. Okay, so it's not about opening your doors and just going blah, because the community and the consumer community may not be ready straight away. That's the one thing to think about, that people are hurting everywhere. So you're not going to be able, you may not be at the same revenue streams or service deliveries at the same time when we open the door. So it's about understanding again what your supply chain can provide for you, and planning what you can provide and what you think your customers want. So that's why it's really important at the moment to keep in contact with your current and previous customers, because that's where we can have some really, really quick wins. What it looks like, I don't think anybody knows. So it's about and putting accountant cap on. I guess it's about minimising risk. Is probably the main thing. I think when I look at our Indigenous businesses and from the survey, I think it was about, let me double check, 82% of businesses relied on revenue from government. Okay.
Wow.
So, 82%. And amongst that as well, they also got a lot of revenue from corporate, so 71% as well. And 40% from events as well. So some of those are going to be double, tripled up and so forth. But so those sorts of things probably aren't going to happen very quickly. Government's not going to open their books up again for a while, because obviously this is costing a lot of money. Corporates are being run on very strict budgets as well, and you see all the layoffs that have happened. Yeah, and events. We don't know what that's going to look like next month, the month after, even 6 months. We don't know whether we are going to be able to have events where people can gather and so forth. So it's about thinking about those risks within your business, and then minimising those risks when we slowly, and government are talking about slowly reopening some of the restrictions that are in place at the moment.
Yeah, well, I look forward to getting out of my house. So hopefully that picks up pace. And thank you so much for coming on today, Scott. I know you're a very busy man. And we'll post this video up for everyone to watch and review and put on the Kinaway channels as well. And look forward to catching up in a couple of weeks with yourself or some of the members.
Absolutely. No worries. Thanks, Isaac.
No worries. Thanks, mate. Have a good day.